It was the ring, mostly. Not its weight in white gold, but the way it caught the light. That solitary glint on the polished mahogany of the table. The cold, perfect proof of our mistakes. If you're still here, stay. Subscribe. You need to understand how one mistake can become a life. I am sitting here, in this Edinburgh kitchen I meticulously designed. The grey Arran granite, the smoked oak of the cabinets. It is the most sterile, most precise place in the whole house, and yet it is here that the dirt covered everything. The silence is thick. The only sound is the dying whistle of the kettle I forgot. Outside Ynoa, the Scottish mist is a wet canvas against the sash windows, washing the day in a uniform, hopeless gray. I see Silas leaning in again. A year ago. We were in New York, at the plaza, in the middle of winter. The snow was falling in big, dramatic flakes, the perfect setting for a conventional proposal. Silas Crawford. He had that name that evoked old money and warm wool. A man of troubling precision, a surgeon by profession, but mostly by nature. "Daphne," he had said, his breath warm on my frozen hand. The ring in the black velvet box was the same one shining beside the jar of blackberry jam. "I can no longer imagine my days without seeing you organize them." That was his declaration of love, polished, ironic, devoid of any emphasis. I had laughed, that soft, accepting laugh I had learned to produce for him. "That's the most beautiful thing anyone has ever said to me, Silas." I had lied. It was the most predictable. I get up, the floorboards creaking softly under my bare feet. Every creak in this house is a secret I agreed to keep. Silas let me decorate it, fill it with that air of cold, unshakable success that people associate with lawyers and surgeons. He paid, I orchestrated. Our life. He is supposed to be back from Leeds tonight. A conference, or something equally forgettable. But the flight was cancelled 4 hours ago because of the fog. And he hasn't called. He hasn't messaged me. Silas is a Swiss clock. Every deviation is a malfunction. And malfunction is never random. I pick up my phone, holding it between 2 fingers like an insect. I dial the number. It rings, a long, steady ring, then goes to voicemail. His voice, precise, articulated. "You've reached Silas Crawford. Please leave a message. I will return your call at my sole discretion." He had never changed that announcement, finding its slightly superior side amusing. I walk to the window, the glass is cold against my forehead. I remember the smell of polished beeswax in his ground floor study. That is where the doubt nested 4 months ago. A detail so insignificant that it took me weeks to pull it from the shadows of my subconscious. The notebook. Silas always uses the same dark brown leather notebooks, imported from Italy. He leaves them open on his desk. One day, as I was vacuuming, I saw it. On a page from the previous week, next to a list of medical supplies, there was a name. A woman's name, written hastily, in a different handwriting than his, more cursive, more desperate. Verity Beaumont. I laughed internally. One of Silas's patients, surely. A nurse, a relative. Silas was dedicated to his work, but he was equally dedicated to his routines. A name scribbled in his notebook was not a clue. It was a simple occurrence. I closed the notebook, putting it back exactly in its place, the spine aligned to the millimeter with the edge of the table. But a seed had been planted. A bitter, metallic-tasting seed. That evening I waited for him to fall asleep. His sleep is regular, his breathing faint and rhythmic, like a metronome. I slipped out of bed, barefoot on the wool rugs. His phone was on his bedside table, as always. I knew the code. I had known it for 3 years. I opened his emails. Nothing. His messages. Nothing but appointment confirmations and messages from his associates. Nothing suspicious. Not even the slightest hint of a secret. There was an elegance to his digital cleanliness that almost made me ashamed. I put the phone back down, feeling the warmth of his body in the bed. I slid under the cold silk sheets, and I turned my back on him, feeling ridiculous, my actions unworthy of the woman I was supposed to be. But the name, Verity Beaumont, it refused to leave me. I started searching, subtly. A Google search one rainy evening, the laptop under the duvet. Verity Beaumont. The most conclusive result came from an old Manchester newspaper article, 7 years ago. A car accident. One passenger, a young man, died instantly. The driver, Verity Beaumont. She had been found not guilty of negligence, but the article spoke of a woman broken by guilt. I left the computer on my stomach. I didn't sleep. The next day I went to Silas's office to bring him a sandwich he hadn't asked for. I apologized to his secretary, Stella Harrington, a meticulous woman with pulled-back hair. I have to leave this for him personally, Stella. His mother made it, you know, a family secret. Stella smiled an accepting smile. Silas loved the image of family perfection that I had carefully constructed. I walked down the hall. His office door was slightly ajar. Silas was on the phone. His voice was low, softer than usual, devoid of his usual surgical resonance. "No, Verity. I told you it was settled. I'll see you at 6 o'clock, at the usual spot." Verity. My heart didn't leap. It contracted, becoming hard and cold. This wasn't romance. That tone wasn't love. It was coercion. Service. Debt. I dropped the bag onto the small waiting table, leaving the rotting sandwich on the glass surface. I turned around without knocking. That day, I began my own surgery. The dissection of my life. I didn't cry. Tears are a waste of water and energy. I started collecting information. I remembered a conversation, an argument, 2 years ago. Flashback. "Why do you never have meetings in Manchester, Silas? You went to university there. You have colleagues." He had looked up from his journal. His gaze swept over my face, cold and analytical. "There's nothing left for me in Manchester, Daphne. I don't like the gray. I built my life here." A lie. A polite, perfectly constructed lie. Manchester, the place where Verity Beaumont still lived, according to the article. I created a fake email address. I started sending letters to Verity Beaumont. Anonymous, polite letters. Not threats. Questions. "Have you ever worked for Dr. Silas Crawford? Your accident. Did you have anyone else in the car?" I sent the first letter by post to Manchester. I waited, my stomach tight. 2 weeks later, I saw a change. Silas looked tired. He came home later, his usual excuse. A difficult procedure. His phone vibrated at odd hours, and he always took the call in another room. The tension was building in him, a dark sap. My seed was sprouting. One evening he stumbled in. The smell of good whiskey preceded him. An unprecedented event. Silas Crawford does not stumble. He is control. He collapsed onto the sofa, his tie loose. I brought a glass of water, placed on a coaster, always the good manners, even in moral collapse. "Is something wrong, Silas?" My voice was soft, the false concern of an understanding wife. He looked at the fire in the fireplace. The flame was reflected in his eyes. "I feel like I can't protect her anymore." "Protect her? Who? Your patient from last week?" He shook his head slowly. "No. The past. I can't protect the past anymore, Daphne. It's cracking." I touched his shoulder, a light touch, without compassion, just an observation of the texture of his tweed jacket. "The past belongs to the dead, Silas." "What is dead?" He turned to me, his eyes bloodshot. I can't tell you about it." "Very well," I said, withdrawing my hand. "When you're ready, But the hot water is starting to cool, my dear. I left him there, collapsing, an emotional ice block on a Chesterfield sofa. The next day I went into the garden. I pretended to pull weeds, the sound of the earth being a good alibi. I found what I was looking for in Silas's office bin, a torn piece of paper, inadvertently thrown there. I pieced the fragments together. It was a note from Verity Beaumont. Desperate, cursive writing, exactly like in the notebook. I received something. Questions. They talk about the accident, about him. It's starting again, Silas. You promised me. I need money to leave, much more than you usually give. If you don't answer me, I'll go see your wife. I'll tell her everything. I remained crouched in the cold earth, my heart not even accelerating. Instead, it paused, then resumed, slower, colder, more relentless. Verity Beaumont's name was not in the notebook by chance. It was there because it was becoming a problem, and problems were the one thing Silas never tolerated. I realized Silas wasn't cheating. He was paying. This wasn't about passion. It was about extortion. Verity Beaumont wasn't his mistress. She was his penance. I took a deep breath. The smell of damp earth was strong. I put the piece of paper in a small silver box, the most precious of secrets. The story of the accident. The article spoke of one passenger, the him in Verity's note. I searched again, using new filters. The 7-year-old article. Verity Beaumont, 25. The deceased passenger. Alistair Vance, 26. Alistair Vance. A childhood friend of Silas. I found Alistair's obituary. One word that chilled me. Beloved, dear sister, Verity. Verity and Alistair were siblings. Silas didn't have a blackmailing lover. He had a broken sister blackmailing him. But why? Silas, the perfect surgeon, the man of control, Alistair's friend. Why would he give Verity money for 7 years? Unless he was in the car. The article. The driver, Verity Beaumont. One passenger, a young man, died instantly. But the deceased passenger was Alistair. Verity was the driver. The article was clear. I felt the tension release in my chest, replaced by a feeling of unease. I needed to know the truth. The whole truth. I sent the last letter to Verity, still anonymously. If Dr. Crawford is lying to you about the accident, you should call the police. And I waited. I waited for the evening of the flight cancellation. I waited for the silence of his phone. I waited for the malfunction. Now, my hands are freezing, leaning against the granite counter. I look at the ring, the perfect circle of our lie. Someone knocks at the door, 2 light but firm knocks. It's Stella Harrington, the meticulous secretary. She's wearing a long gray trench coat, and her face is a mask of bad news. Dr. Crawford asked you to come to Leeds. The fog has lifted there. He hasn't called me, Stella. His phone is off. He is at St. Jude's Hospital. He had a minor accident. I looked at the ring, then at Stella. What kind of accident, Stella? Is he all right? My voice was a whisper. He's fine, Daphne. I don't have all the details. But he told me to tell you not to forget the study key. The study key, the one he always kept on him, attached to his car keys. I felt the surge of adrenaline. I went upstairs, dressed in neutral clothes, then came back down. I must go to Leeds. Please take care of the house. I didn't take a plane. I took the car, driving south towards Manchester. The key wasn't in the house. I found it on his car keychain, which was parked in the garage. There it was, tiny, shiny. I drove without music, without the radio, just the sound of the wipers. I thought about Silas's words. I can't protect her anymore. I arrived in Manchester. Verity Beaumont's house was small, red brick. I knocked. Verity Beaumont was a woman of faded beauty. Her eyes were large, dark-circled, a wound. She opened the door, looking me up and down. "I'm Daphne Crawford, Silas's wife." She showed no surprise, just infinite weariness. "I know who you are." I entered. The inside was as weary as Verity. The silence was even heavier than in Edinburgh. "Silas is in the hospital." She nodded. "He called me this morning. He wanted to see me. He became hysterical." "He had an accident, Verity." "No," she said, her voice strangely detached. "I went to see him. He received a letter, a threat. He had a seizure. His driver was at the wheel." I sat down. "I think the threat was from me." She laughed, a dry sound. "I thought so. Your handwriting. Why is Silas giving you money?" Verity looked at me, her eyes filled with 7 years of sadness. "Because on the day of the accident, 7 years ago, I wasn't the one driving the car. It was him." My heart contracted. Not the leap of surprise, but the final blow of confirmation. "The article said you were driving, Verity." "He paid the investigator. He was in the car, with Alistair, my brother. They were coming back from a party. Silas had been drinking. He lost control. Alistair died. Silas ran away, calling me. He said, 'Either you say you were driving, or I'll drag you through court. We'll hold hands, and we'll say you're innocent, but if you tell the truth, I swear I'll destroy you.' I was broken. I agreed. He set up the story. He paid to have it settled, so that I would be acquitted, but alone, broken." I looked at her. The confession was devoid of emotion, a simple explanation. "And you believed him?" "I loved him. He was my brother's friend. I needed someone to cling to, and he gave me an allowance." "And you started asking him for more money?" She nodded. "He kept saying he was going to protect me, but he was controlling me. I needed him to leave me alone." "He sent you a letter, 4 days ago. I found it in his bin." Verity paled. "He was telling me he was fed up, that I was a threat, that he was going to tell the truth." "He was going to say he drove, Verity?" She shook her head. "He was going to say I was the one driving, but that I ran away, and he covered for me out of kindness. He threatened to drag me through court for Alistair's death." I understood. Silas, the man who organized my life, also organized his own, and he was about to destroy hers again. I stood up. I took a deep breath, smelling the dust and despair in that small house. "I have the key to his study, Verity, and I know where he keeps the file." Silas was at St. Jude's Hospital in Leeds. I went to the office. I didn't take the car. I took the train. The office. I inserted the key, a soft click. The smell of wax, leather, control. I walked to his desk. The 4th shelf, beneath the medical directories. A metal box, locked. I inserted the key. Inside the file. The police report, the investigator's report, a photo of Alistair, a smiling young man, and a handwritten letter, signed Verity Beaumont. A handwritten confession. I acknowledge having been the driver of the car. I took it. I put it in my bag. I replaced it with the piece of paper I had found in the bin. Verity's threat. "If you don't answer me, I'll go see your wife. I'll tell her everything." I went to Leeds. The hospital was huge, sterile. I found his room. Silas was in a white bed, his arm in a sling. He looked at me. His relief was palpable. "Daphne, finally, I told you the key was important." "Yes," I said, my voice calm. "I have it. What happened, Silas?" "I had a seizure. A panic attack. I'm tired. Work stress. It was Verity, wasn't it? She blackmailed you. He closed his eyes. Yes. She asked me for more money. She's crazy. And the file in your office? Was she going to take it? Yes, he said. The police report. She was going to modify it. She was going to say I was the one driving. But I protected you. You won't be linked to this. I approached the bed. I touched his arm. You always controlled everything, Silas. You were always the hero. He smiled, his relief evident. I'm sorry I didn't trust you. But the key. I have it, I said. Good, now call Stella. Tell her to destroy the box, just in case. It's already done, I said. I replaced the police report with something more relevant. He looked at me. I took out my phone. I dialed a number. Hello? Is this social services? I'm Daphne Crawford. I'm at St. Jude's Hospital in Leeds. My husband, Dr. Silas Crawford, confessed. He needs help. He said his friend, Alistair Vance, didn't die 7 years ago, as the police report states. He said he killed him. Silas tried to get up, but the sling prevented him. Daphne, what are you doing? His voice was a distorted whisper. Verity Beaumont's confession in the file. It was written by him, but that's not what I left there, Silas. I looked at his face. Terror. Control shattered. What I left was the threat she sent you. The threat to say you paid her. But the twist. I smiled, a cold, precise smile. She's not the only one you lied to. I am Juliet Carstairs, Silas. Alistair's girlfriend. Your girlfriend. I was pregnant. You ruined everything. You killed him. You organized my life. You organized hers. My ring. My life. Now it's my turn. I didn't ask Verity to threaten to say you drove. I asked her to threaten to say you paid her. And you put a fake confession in your office. A confession the police will find. And now I'm telling them you confessed. And the only evidence you have is a blackmail threat, and that you were the one driving. I leaned in. I didn't organize my life, Silas. I organized your revenge for the death of the man I loved. Grief is the one thing you couldn't control. He was silent. I hung up. Goodbye, Silas. I took my life back. It's strange to feel the cold wind on my skin, here, on the bridge. I threw the ring into the sea. It made only an insignificant ripple. Guilt is a pain you deserve. Vengeance is a justice you construct. If this story still echoes in you, stay. Subscribe. There is always another secret veiled in the dark.